Let's start at the beginning. In our pre-show conversation, I loved hearing about where you are, how you got here today. So I think our listeners would love it. How did supporting your family business lead you into a career in HR?
Well, so originally, like as you mentioned, I was supporting our family business, and we just had a couple of employees. We got a large contract where we needed to hire people like overnight. And that increased the level of management that we needed. I really didn't have that experience. And so it led me to hire a PEO, a professional employer organization, to support us. And that minimized the legal fees that we were paying just for simple stuff that we didn't know how to do. And so as I started working with the PEO and getting some training from them, I got more and more interested in HR. And so I started to study HR and proceed on it for multiple certifications. And what that did is allow us not only to support our internal employees, but to help other small businesses do the same thing. And I realized I just had this love for HR.
I love that. And so what made you decide to go in the direction of like full on consulting?
Well, as I was supporting our business, I really got to see firsthand how intentional HR policies and strategies could really not only support the business, but also your employees. And early on, our first hire was a young man that we hired. He was just out of prison and he just impressed us. We knew he just needed a second chance. He did something when he was younger, very bad mistake. He needed a second chance. So we decided to hire him. He became one of our most loyal employees. He stayed with us for years. We promoted him many times. And because of giving him that second chance, he and his family prospered. They were able to buy their first home. And that impressed upon me firsthand how intentionally inclusive strategies, HR strategies, can support the business, but it can also improve your employees' lives. And that is really what sold me on moving to HR as soon as I had an opportunity to do that full time.
I love that. When you work with founders that maybe who don't have internal HR, do you see any parallels between their journey and your own? Like, do you see how they're struggling to build and maybe you're able to really tap into that? I would.
Definitely. I see the challenge of trying to support HR, your staff, compliance, engagement, all these things without having that experience. And so I'm able to relate to them and help them to see where it really is important that you get some help, professional HR help, because even now, 20 plus years after I started, human resources is so much more complicated with compliance. And it really is critical that you have a plan, you get support,
Right.
because ultimately every business, it's about people. You can have the greatest business, but people have to implement that for you. And so you really need to focus on people strategies. And that's what I try and help founders do.
See that. So tell us about Visionova HR. Who are your ideal clients today? Who are you serving?
Yes. So Visionova HR, we really work with small to mid-sized businesses. Particularly our niche is say 10 to 150 employees. And those companies typically don't have an internal HR department or professional HR support, or they may have a department or department of one. And at that 100 employee mark, and it's just overwhelming, or even before that. And so we provide support to small departments, but primarily our biggest segment is those without professional HR, and they've just inherited the HR function.
Maybe like the owner or somebody's doing. What is the biggest HR risk or mistake that you see small businesses who don't have an HR support consultant? What is the risk there that they face?
So the biggest risk I see is handing over the HR function to someone who's just good with people and not necessarily have the experience. So the risk comes in where there's huge compliance risks, particularly in California, or not doing the right thing unintentionally, not knowing the right thing to do. I think that's a huge risk. The other risk is just really having a culture that you didn't plan, it just happened. And oftentimes, when that culture just happens, it's not good.
Oh, interesting.
So, yes, really being intentional about the culture that you build, and HR can help you with that because you're going to focus on not only policy creation, but also engaging.
Put the guardrails on and set them on a path
Exactly.
and make sure they're staying like that. How do people issues impact productivity and business growth? Or I would imagine leaders might not see that correlation between productivity and HR and how they're growing. Share with us how they are intertwined. That's important.
They are so intertwined, and particularly for small businesses, because as a small business, if one person is underperforming, there may not be someone else who can pick up the pace and make those improvements. So it is critical. Typically, with underperforming employees, you've wasted 30 to 50% of their salary if that is not handled. And so avoiding issues like that, if you're a small business and you've got 10 employees and one is underperforming, that can cost you quite a bit on your bottom line. But imagine if you're larger and you're 50 employees and 2% or a few of your employees are underperforming, that's going to impact your clients, your customers, your productivity, all of that. And small businesses are going to feel it before a larger enterprise.
Can be absorbed. What are some specific, maybe warning signs that a company may need more strategic HR support? Like as an owner, small business owner, what should we be paying attention to? Where like, well, in addition to the fact that if we don't have HR, but maybe something more strategic or it's not the right partner, what should we be looking for?
Well, one thing to really pay attention to is how many employees you have. So if you start off small and you have 1 to 5 employees, you can get away without having HR oftentimes. But as soon as you get to 5 and then 10, that small business can no longer just wing it. There's much more compliance. So another way to look at that also is if you're spending more time on HR and people issues and you need to be spending more time on the business, then that's also a clue that you need to get additional help. This year, 2026, there are so many new compliance and new employment laws that require employee notice. They require employers to follow up and that notice. It's so important now that you get it right. Even if you have one employee with increased enforcement, it's very risky now to operate without knowing when you have employees in California.
Fair. You shared with me how a lot of times clients will inherit their HR framework or their policy instead of designing it themselves. Let's talk about that. Like, let's say you've inherited an HR framework that's not working for you. Is it possible to change it? Or how is it like a giant ship that you're trying to move full course? Or what would be some subtle changes that they could make to right the ship, I guess?
Yes. So inheriting HR is a risky thing because you may or may not know what policies are in place. Is there a handbook? Is that handbook 5 years old and needs major updates? The risk also are about inheriting policies that were non-compliant from the beginning. I've had clients in the past that have been handed down, say for instance, policies or a handbook that they have 10 employees. That handbook was written by a business associate for their company with 300 employees. So you've just adopted that handbook and now you're accountable for what's in the handbook and you're 10 people, 10 employees. You can't afford to do with that 300 employee.
Oh, wow. That would be a risk.
So that's a huge risk. And inheriting policies or HR without support really means that unless you go through a thorough audit and really know what those policies are, how they're going to impact the culture you're trying to build. Whereas those that inherited HR may have been based on a totally different culture of a past leader or a culture that just doesn't support where the organization is at that point. So you really want to design your culture and your HR.
Nice. You support nonprofits, founders, and people managers. How would you say their HR challenges differ? Or do you see differences between like a nonprofit and for profit?
Yes, there are major differences. It boils down to the same things around people, avoidance, being intentional about your policies. However, with nonprofits, because they are so mission focused and mission oriented, oftentimes it takes longer for them to address underlying issues because people are devoted to that mission and there's an employee, a leader who's devoted to the mission, and we're all just trying to do this great work. But underlying problems are ignored or avoided because we don't want to impact the mission of the organization. And so we turn away and ignore some of those issues.
Oh, interesting. I did not think of that. Makes sense, though. Okay, let's talk about technology. What does your current technology stack look like with your HR firm, or what tools are you using?
So we really try and keep it simple. So we definitely use Microsoft 365. We use Zoom as our preferred meeting platform. We focus on our platform for HRIS, which is our simple payroll that helps our organization. And then we add different platforms as they become necessary to support our clients. So we try and keep it simple and so that we're not all over the place, and that's difficult. That is really difficult. There's so many things that can you can add to the mix, and then it's working for a month or two, and then you realize, okay, this is not the best. So we're constantly in that battle of trying to keep it simple.
Like that. How are you using AI, or how are you seeing AI show up in your business?
So the main way that we're using AI is like our basic research tool. And we've been very judicious about choosing the platform that we're going to use that helps us to get real, actual, factual research that we can rely on. And at the same time, we audit ourselves.
Exactly.
So that is the main way we use AI for research, getting our basic research, and then we use it to help us put together really, say, more in-depth proposals. That's a big feature for us. So we use AI. We like it.
That's great.
But you have to be careful and you have to audit and make sure the information you're getting is correct and you choose the right source.
What risks do businesses face when employees are using AI tools and there aren't those clear guidelines?
Oh, it's a huge risk. So I think first off, from an HR standpoint, there are the risks of data being exposed, particularly data around the employees and payroll and social security numbers, identity, and all of that is critical. Then there's the proprietary information that also can be exposed. And so if you don't have rules around how your team uses AI, what platform they're going to use, and how secure it is. If you don't have policies around that, you're opening yourselves up for data breaches and just all kinds of things.
Are you seeing your clients, are they coming and asking for help on that? Or are you like aggressively, nicely telling them they should be having it? Because I know, like for myself, when I see in our clients, we help them with their writing an acceptable use policy for AI. And sometimes they don't think about it, right? It's me like not nagging them, but just gently reminding them. Is that a forward thing that you would roll out to your clients? Or how do you talk to when you see like, oh, we need to be increasing this? How does that go for you?
Yes, I think it's probably 50-50. We have some clients that ask about AI and what they should be doing, but oftentimes it comes up in our conversations around compliance, new laws. In employee handbooks, we are recommending that all of our clients have an AI policy, and that is customized, is drafted for their organization and how they use AI, their clients, and what protections they need. But we are diving into that conversation because many of our clients will ask them, are you using AI? And they say no, but I know that their staff is using AI. And so sometimes that's the conversation that we really need to talk about how they're using AI because they are.
There's a term I've heard, I think I shared this with you before, shadow AI. We talk about like shadow IT, where sometimes team members will bring in their own tool, like maybe they'll start using Canva or they'll use some tool that's not really pushed down from the organization, but they like it. And now there's this trend of people bringing their own LLM to work, whatever their account is, and putting their client data in there. And there's, I guess, really two, of course, with everything, two sides to that story. One person I was speaking with said, "Oh, he thinks it's great. Everyone should just be bringing their shadow IT and then look at what works." And the others are like, "Me." And I'm like, "No, that's so dangerous." So it's definitely from what I see, is a balancing act of like team member, making sure owners are giving some AI tool that the team members will use. But it's a definite interesting phenomenon, I think.
It is. And shadow AI is, to me, it's scary because you don't know what people are bringing. How reliable is it? How accurate is it? And where are you uploading data if you're uploading that data? So that is a question that needs to be answered and not just assumed that
Right.
you would approve of what employees are using for their AI support.
From your perspective, from an HR perspective, do you see cybersecurity and workplace policy? Do you see those connected? Or talk about that a little bit.
I do. And I think I have a little different take on cybersecurity. A lot of times people are talking about hacking, identity theft, and that is all very important and to HR too. But where I have encountered that over the last 5 years consistently is in when an employee, rogue employee, they're unhappy, and that person has access. They have all the keys. They have access to the QuickBooks, to G Suite,
Email.
to the everything, and they're unhappy, they go rogue. And when you finally deal with this situation and there needs to be a separation, now you feel like you're held hostage because they have everything and you have to get it from them. And so that is a big conversation. That's how oftentimes we've been brought in to support clients recently, over the past few years, for that exact situation,
Oh, interesting to sort it out.
a high risk termination.
And then would you work with their IT department, or generally I would almost expect maybe they don't really have a robust IT department?
They don't. So oftentimes when I come in like that with a high risk termination, I bring in a team. So it's HR, it's an IT consultant that will come in and help them retrieve and get back as much as they possibly can. And oftentimes there are things that are just, they're not getting back. Legal team. So, and sometimes fractional CFO. So as an HR consultant, you really get involved in a lot of the business in different ways, organizations in different ways. And so bringing in partners to help reset issues like that is so critical. I've had clients that have been locked out of bank accounts.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's horrible.
On top of that, then how would you think HR and IT could work better together to protect an organization? What is a best practice to make sure those things won't happen again? Or how do you like to set that framework?
So I set the framework where that is one of the recommendations I have when I'm helping build an HR foundation. One of the keys is IT, and bringing in a consultant, or if they have a team that they're working with, is really putting a structure together that has redundancies. There's not one person with the keys to everything.
Yes.
There are multiple admins. That is checked. That is what the passwords are. There's a password manager. No one can change a password without upper management, owners, founders knowing that that's happening and are not allowed to take over the organization from an IT standpoint. And so that's part of the process that we help them build. We start off with password managers and get them working with the IT team to support them depending on how their organization is structured.
We work with a lot of HR professionals. They're probably my favorite referral partner because we do work so well together. Like, we want this team, we want this organization to function well, right? I want the systems to work well, you want the people to work well, but they definitely have to be in communication. I think once you start to see it siloed, it can be problematic from what I've seen. When you shared with me, I love this quote. You said, when you focus on what's respectful, you'll never get to what's illegal. I love that. Can you unpack that for our listeners? Dive into what you meant with that? I love that quote. It's great.
Sure. So oftentimes, especially small businesses, but enterprises also, are really focused on not getting sued, what's illegal, and not doing what's illegal. But when you focus on building a respectful, intentional culture, the illegal things are not going to come up so frequently.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about, is this illegal? Is this discrimination? Is this, when you're respectful, you focus on that. You build a respectful culture. Sure, it doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. You still may have to deal with something from a legal standpoint, but the idea is that is not the focus. And so when you're focused on what's respectful, you have far fewer opportunities for lawsuits and for employee filing meritless claims. So the idea is to focus on what's respectful. What's illegal rarely will raise its head.
I love that. It's just a great way, I think, of running your business. I'm like, oh, not that I'm not disrespectful, but I think it's nice that, because sometimes when people start saying compliant and this and rules, it gets to be oppressive, but we all want to be respectful of each other. So that's an easier lean to if we're not super compliant minded. How does a workplace culture influence security, trust, and employee behavior? I think that ties into the being respectful.
It does. And so building a respectful workplace culture, and part of that being respectful is communication. Okay. So being open to receiving feedback and also giving feedback, having that communication that's on a regular basis, that builds a respectful culture. And that culture is going to improve productivity, performance, it's going to reduce legal risks. And when you're respectful, you're also compliant, right? Because the respect means that I understand the rights and responsibilities as an employer. And I also understand the rights and responsibilities of my employee. And so if I do that, then that culture is going to help me make sure that I'm compliant. So I'm respecting those rights and responsibilities.
I love that.
So that just improves the entire picture for an organization.
What are some like leadership habits, if you will, or things that we should be doing on the daily that will create like a healthy workplace where everyone can communicate? What's a little tip that we can do just to continue those strong leadership habits?
So I think my biggest tip is never ignore poor performance.
Mm,
It will never correct itself. So many of my clients ignore, avoid those difficult conversations. And when you do that, eventually whatever's going on is going to come up. And by that time, you've ignored it for months or avoided the conversation for months. When it does come up, it's huge and it can take away from the culture of an organization because that's been allowed. And then that's when we get into what's illegal, because it may be behaviors that are disrespectful that eventually lead to illegal harassment, discrimination, retaliation, all those things come up. So when you see poor performance, if you nip it in the bud and have those difficult conversations when they can be brief, you really prevent so many other bigger problems.
I love that. It's a good reminder. I have, well, full disclosure, I have something of that going on myself. And it's like, I'm too much of an empath. And it's like, I just need to be stronger on that. So thank you for that reminder today, Bernadette.
We'll talk.
Exactly. Okay. So this was great. I really appreciate this. At the end of our podcast, we like to do a quick little rapid fire where I'm going to ask you some questions and you're just going to say what's at the top of your mind. What is one tech tool that you cannot run your business without, that you must have?
Zoom.
Fair. That's great.
I'm on Zoom almost all day long, constantly. Yes.
Exactly. That's a good one. What do you see as the biggest cybersecurity risk small businesses sometimes ignore when you're like, oh gosh, what you need to be tending to that?
I think the biggest one is we talked about one person, one employee, one leader having access to all of the tools.
I've had that scenario where people have reached out because their IT person died with like all of the passwords on their phone and they're locked out of the phone and it's a mess. So I agree with you. That's great. Password manager, yes or no? Do you use password manager?
Yes, definitely.
Yes, you do. Okay. And what is one workplace policy every company should have for 2026?
Oh, wow. The Know Your Rights Act in the state of California.
Okay.
It changes the game. It's no longer just a notice.
Okay, good. We'll put that in our show notes so everyone could read that. Culture or compliance, which comes first?
I think they go hand in hand.
Okay, fair. I love it.
It's culture. You need a good culture to be compliant and stay compliant. You need a good culture. So it's like,
No, I love that. Bernadette, thank you so much for joining me today. I love this conversation. Your culture first approach to HR is such an important reminder that strong workplaces aren't built on fear of getting it wrong. They're built on clarity, trust, and respect. And the way you connected HR strategy, compliance, and AI policies to real world leadership decisions was incredibly helpful for any founder or people manager listening. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into the Cyber Savvy Woman, where we explore practical ways women can protect themselves, their businesses, and their futures in this increasingly digital world. To connect with Bernadette and learn more about Visionova HR Consulting, including her newsletter, Total HR Archie, check the show notes for links and resources. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please follow, rate, and share. And share with a women business owner or leader in your world. And join us next time for more real conversations about technology, leadership, and a more cyber savvy life. Bernadette, thank you so much.
thank you. It's been been a pleasure.
The Cyber Savvy Woman podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Hey, thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.